What's up, guys? Today is the day. Welcome to my entire Blu-ray collection video. I've been meaning to film this for a little while now. It needed an update, but I'm just gonna say this right off the bat. When it comes to my personal physical media collection, I feel like I'm a lot more picky and selective about the titles I want at my disposal than some other collectors. You know, no offense to anyone that goes out there and buys 3,000 Blu-rays. I wish I had your strength and your wallet, but I don't. So if you see a movie in this video, it means it's near and dear to my heart, very special, or it was a gift. There's definitely some of those in here too. So let's get into it. Alright, starting this video off, we've got the 10-film SciFi collection from Universal Studios. A high school buddy gave me this one way back in the day, and there's actually some pretty good movies on it. 12 Monkeys, Hellboy 2, Lucy, Oblivion, which I think is a very underrated Tom Cruise movie. So yeah, this one just makes good use of my television and my whole setup over there in the man cave, so I just like having this one out when the buddies are around. It's simple as that. Next, we have the triple feature Stanley Kubrick Blu-ray with 2001: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, and The Shining. Obviously, The Shining, one of the best horror movies ever made. Absolutely love it to pieces. I actually took a films of Stephen King class in college, so I analyzed the shit out of it every single way you could imagine. So I just love that movie. A Clockwork Orange, I've actually only seen one time. I really need to revisit it. I feel like I said that in my last Blu-ray update video too. And then 2001: A Space Odyssey, obviously another Pantheon classic from Kubrick. So this is just a great one to have if you're a big Kubrick fan. Next, we have the Alien 6-film collection Steelbook. I love this franchise. The ups and the downs, I don't really care. Alien's a classic. Aliens is a classic from James Cameron. A lot of the other ones are enjoyable. You know, I won't say that I love all the movies in this saga, all right? I mean, look, they gave us a free coaster, right? If you need somewhere to put your drink, they put Alien 3 in here, so that's super nice of them. Next, we have The Batman. I think it was my number 2 favorite movie of last year. Absolutely love this gritty detective noir take on the character. Matt Reeves killed it. I've been singing Robert Pattinson's praises for a long time. I was a guy like everyone else that shat on him after the Twilight movies. But God, has the guy made a complete 180, one of the best actors working today, so needed to pick that up. A lot of good performances in there, though. Next, we have the Big Lebowski. I think this is some kind of like special edition 4K Steelbook case. I just love the way it looks. It's got that cool like comic book frame feel. One of my favorite Coen Brothers movies. I think my favorite might actually be No Country for Old Men, but I don't think I even own that one. I might have to purchase that the second after I finish filming this video. But this is their funniest movie to me. Total cult classic for a reason, even though it's super mainstream popular, but this is an awesome movie. Highly suggest if you somehow haven't seen it, but it's just so quotable. Next, we have Birdman. Oh man, Birdman is a top 5 movie ever for me, which might sound insane to some people. Whether you've seen it or not seen it, that might just sound insane, but absolutely love this movie. Everything about it. I was hype when it won Best Picture at the Oscars. I do think that Michael Keaton should have also taken home Best Actor that year as well, but you know, can't always get what we want. But this is filled with loads of performances, great cinematography because it's supposed to all look like it's one shot. Killer movie. Highly suggest. Killer movie. Then we have Black Christmas on 4K. All right. This is one that I hadn't seen. Like, it took me a long time to watch it. I don't know why, even though I'm a big slasher fan. And I like that, like, kind of holiday Christmas angle. I mean, usually if it's a slasher movie, obviously, you get that tried and true Halloween setting, right? This one makes use of a really cool, like, sorority, winter vacation, college campus environment. I don't know why it took me so long to watch this one, but this one absolutely slaps. If you're a slasher fan and somehow haven't seen this one, well worth your time. Had to pick it up. Like, the credits rolled and I picked it up on 4K immediately. Next, you have the Bourne Trilogy. Look, I'm a Boston guy, right? So Matt Damon, I gotta represent. This is just a kick-ass action trilogy. You know, I didn't feel like I needed a collection that included the 4th one with Jeremy Renner or that 5th kind of like standalone Jason Bourne we got with Matt Damon kind of much later on. But these movies are just always fun to put on if you're looking for like an adrenaline rush. I mean, everybody loves these first 3 films. I just, if you like the action genre, I don't see how you don't love the Bourne movies. Cabin in the Woods, one of my favorite horror movies ever, obviously. I mean, I kind of spent the extra dough on this like 4K steelbook with the slipcover. It's super funny. It's gory as hell. It's got some scares in there too, but more importantly, it's just super creative. I heard the entire screenplay for this thing, even though it's super meta and kind of genius in my opinion, was written in a hotel room over the course of like 72 hours. I've always remembered that whenever I'm like writing or when I was in script writing classes in college, I was like, how the hell did they pull that off? But that's a great little horror comedy. One of the rare ones that actually uses both elements really well. Next, we have Captain America Civil War. Captain America is my favorite MCU superhero. I won't call him my favorite Marvel superhero, but in the MCU, he's my boy, right? I still think he has the best trilogy in the MCU. Sorry to anyone that thinks it's Guardians or Spider-Man. It's definitely not Spider-Man with that second movie, but this movie is basically like Avengers Light, right? Like it's like a mini Avengers movie, especially that airport fight scene. Really fun comic book movie here. Speaking of really fun comic book movies, Deadpool. I really think that first Deadpool movie kind of changed the way we saw comedy in comic book films. Somewhat, you could probably argue for the worse, because then just ridiculous amounts of unnecessary comedy was forced into every comic book film after this, but this one really rocked the boat. I saw this day one in theaters, laughed my ass off. I think I went again the very next day. Ryan Reynolds was built to play this role of Wade Wilson in Deadpool, such a good wisecracker. Does he kind of only play Deadpool now in all the movies he's done since then? Jury's still out there. I'm going to say yes, but this first Deadpool is a classic when it comes to comic book films. Next, you have the Scorsese triple feature with The Departed, Goodfellas, and The Aviator. Once again, I mean, I said it like 2 minutes ago. I'm a Boston guy. The Departed basically runs through my veins. I can quote way more than I would care to admit of this movie. I almost kind of turned it into a comedy, unfortunately. Like me and all my friends can quote it to the point where it's almost like lost its dramatic, grandeur, but still awesome gangster movie. Scorsese's kind of the king of that genre. Then you have Goodfellas right below it. I mean, what can I say that hasn't already been said? Joe Pesci, Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro. I mean, the casts in both of these movies is just totally insane, especially for a gangster film. Probably the two best gangster films ever made by the same director, which is pretty crazy. I've only seen The Aviator with Leo once. I got to revisit that one, but don't really have too much to say about it or experience. I mostly got that triple pack because of those first two films, and The Aviator was kind of just an added bonus. Next, I have Event Horizon on 4K Steelbook. This was one, again, like Black Christmas. It took me a while to watch it. I don't know why it took me so long, because it's kind of got a winning combination, right? Like Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill, awesome, like cosmic, atmospheric, outer space horror. Yeah, I really dug this one. I will say, though, there's something always in the back of my head that I wish there was kind of like a more extended edition director's cut of this. I heard that the studio kind of stepped in thinking that the body horror and all the visuals were almost getting too weird, so they toned it down for the theatrical version and whatever, but this is still a pretty kick-ass horror movie. Speaking of kick-ass horror, we have Evil Dead, the 2013 remake. I don't know if anyone saw my full franchise ranking of the Evil Dead films. This is probably a scorching hot take. This is my favorite one of the entire saga. I mean, obviously, I love those Sam Raimi originals, especially Evil Dead 2. But God, I think this one rips. It's an absolute buzzsaw of a horror movie. Gory, unapologetic. It's really cool how it keeps the same backbone of the story, but flips the script enough that it feels new to us and not like just a regular horror remake copycat that we see all the time. Bloody good time, 2013 Evil Dead. Next, we have Ex Machina, another one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. I'm a big sci-fi guy. You can probably learn that already just by seeing what you've seen in my collection so far. This movie, front to back, I mean, it's probably in like my top 20 movies ever made, which is extremely high praise, obviously, but Alicia Vikander kills it. Oscar Isaac, Domhnall Gleeson. It's pretty much a three-man show outside of a couple other little performances and Kimiko, that robot, I think that was her name. But this movie, edge of my seat, unbelievable sci-fi, basically the modern version of Frankenstein. If you somehow haven't seen that, banger. Go watch that. Next, we have Fight Club. David Fincher might be my favorite director today. His catalog is so vast. I love it. I can't wait for his future projects that have already been announced. But yeah, Fight Club is just such a great movie. It does change a little bit on repeat viewings after you know the massive twist. I will say this is one movie kind of towards the top of the list that I wish I could just wipe from my brain and experience for the first time all over again. But yeah, just another great movie. Brad Pitt, who's one of my favorite actors ever. Ed Norton, who's another one of my favorites. They kick ass in that movie. Next, we have The Fifth Element on 4K. Again, this is one that kind of took me a while to watch. I don't know why, because I love sci-fi, especially when it's kind of goofy and weird and funny, which this one definitely is. It kicks it up to 11. This is such a sick movie. I've never been a massive Bruce Willis fan. He slays it in this. Mila Jovovich, Gary Oldman, Chris Tucker is in this, and he's completely insane but hilarious. Such a wild science fiction romp. This one still holds up. I think the effects still look really cool. Like, yeah, you'll watch it and you'll be like, okay, that's not from the last couple decades, but it still looks really good for those standards. So I would suggest you watch this one. Don't sleep on it like I did, I'll tell you that. Next, we have Get Out, all right? Jordan Peele's debut, one of the best directorial debuts I've ever witnessed in my entire life. It's super funny, it's got a lot of thrills, and it's got a lot to say. Really genius idea here from Jordan Peele and great execution and very awesome performances from everyone involved here. Yeah, not much more to say. I mean, everyone loves this movie. So next we have Gladiator. Like I said earlier, huge Ridley Scott guy. Also love Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix. I mean, this thing's a Best Picture winner, which is crazy that a movie like this won that, but had to have this in my collection. Hacksaw Ridge. All right, another scorching hot take coming your way. Pound for pound, I think that this is the best war movie ever made. I don't know, I just do. I mean, Andrew Garfield probably should have won an Oscar for this. Great direction, it's emotional, it's filled with passion, it's a true story. It's got some comedy in there, it's action-filled. Just total package, love that movie. Halloween, the original John Carpenter Halloween. Obviously such a quintessentially important slasher film. Really helped to start the genre as we know it is today. Michael Myers is just such an icon at this point. Great score, great little performance from Jamie Lee Curtis in here. I mean, what's not to love? Tons of special features on that re-release too. The Harry Potter 8-film collection on Blu-ray. I'm not even gonna lie to you, I grew up as a massive Harry Potter nerd. I was one of those kids waiting outside of Barnes & Nobles at midnight for the release of some of the books. Read all of them multiple times. So, I mean, come on. A sucker for this franchise. Absolutely hate that they're remaking it as a TV show. I've had enough rants on that. I'm not going to go into one now, so we're moving on. Heavy Metal 4K Steelbook. I mean, this is a movie that a guy in college, one of my best friends, we'd come back from the bars late at night and he would throw this on all the time. It became like a staple in our household in college. So it has kind of a lot of sentimental meaning to me. I also just think it's a badass animation flick. I mean, you didn't see that much mainstream adult crazy animation coming out at that time. So I just had to pick this up when I saw that it had that 4K Steelbook release. So Heavy Metal kind of gets thrown on a lot in this house, which is kind of funny. The Indiana Jones Complete Adventures, which is no longer complete now that the Dial of Destiny is out, even though that was my least favorite of the entire franchise, but I'm not going to get into that. But Raiders of the Lost Ark is seriously my favorite movie ever made. It has been for like 20 years. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Indiana Jones is probably the best movie character ever created. Love The Last Crusade too, obviously. Pound for pound, it's not as up there as Raiders of the Lost Ark for me, but God, the inclusion of Sean Connery, some incredibly iconic scenes in that one too, so love having these on hand at all times. Also, Kingdom of Crystal Skull isn't looking so bad anymore after Dial of Destiny. I will just say that. John Wick, and I've had to stop myself multiple times from buying the sequels or from upgrading to 4K, just because I know I'm going to want whatever sick Steelbook complete bundle they do once the franchise is actually over. Who knows? I think that they're thinking of making a Chapter 5. I've said this a lot, that I actually don't even want John Wick to be in Chapter 5. Or someone on Twitter said, like, it should be him in hell trying to fight his way to heaven. Actually, would be a badass movie. But until then, just chapter 1 for me on Blu-ray. Such a good action movie. Insanely rewatchable. Johnny English. And this is another very sentimental movie for me. Me and my dad still to this day laugh our asses off at this film, to the point that like I'll put this on for someone else that hasn't really seen the movie before and they just want to leave the room in 20 minutes. I mean, like the routine me and him put on, right? We're like quoting it all the time. We're laughing. We're being obnoxious. I know it's a tough look, but Johnny English, man, God, do we love that movie. Had to be in this collection. Had to be. And then, of course, Jurassic Park, another one that had to be in this collection. Actually, super surprising that I don't own this one on 4K or like some Steelbook special edition. I think I looked on eBay pretty recently. They're kind of expensive if I'm remembering correctly. But at some point, I mean, like, I grew up as a dino nerd, you know? So I'm going to have to upgrade at some point. But Jurassic Park, obviously, one of the best movies ever. Spielberg is just flawless with his direction in that. Peter Jackson's King Kong. I think that this one is a legitimate masterpiece. I love this movie. Even though people say it's long, it's like over 3 hours. Peter Jackson directs the absolute shit out of this. It still looks great. I love the performances, all the way down to Jack Black. I don't care if people say he's miscast. Not to me. I think this movie is unbelievable. I know people like it and love it, but I think it should be like revered. This is a masterpiece for me. That was an instant buy on 4K. God, I mean, that bug scene still gives me nightmares. The Last Action Hero, Steelbook 4K. This is one of the most underrated Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, and I also think it was kind of before its time. It was very meta, had a ton of references from pop culture in it, pretty funny, hilariously entertaining story. So I think this one was pretty underappreciated in its time. I think it's getting more appreciated by modern audiences and people that kind of discover it, I don't know, on rental or streaming. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but very underrated Arnie movie. Love that one. The Last Duel on 4K. I mean, come on, you're seeing this Ridley Scott theme here. I absolutely love the guy, huge fan. This was one of my absolute favorite movies. I think it actually was my favorite movie of 2021, and I feel like nobody saw it. I still think a lot of people have not seen it. They're sleeping on it. I mean, I almost stood up in my empty theater. This movie was so intense. The duels and the fight scenes were crazy. The acting is incredible. I mean, you have Matt Damon, Adam Driver, Jodie Comer, Ben Affleck even is fantastic in this movie. He kind of embraces a ridiculous, entertaining role as this just total asshole Duke. Great direction from Ridley Scott. I mean, dude, do not sleep on this movie. If you somehow haven't seen it, rent it. I doubt it's on streaming, but this is such a good movie. My favorite of 2021, like I said. The Lord of the Rings trilogy on 4K. And I have owned so many different versions of the Lord of the Rings trilogy on Blu-ray over the years. I think it was like last year or 2 years ago, they finally announced they were doing this crazy 4K restoration bundle for it for the first time. I don't think it's ever been on 4K before. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but this was a day one pre-order for me. I literally think I purchased this on Amazon like a year and a half before it even came out. Worth the entire $90 that it cost. Like, I mean, come on. Might arguably be the best trilogy of films ever made. Still holds up. I mean, the CGI mixed with some practical stuff. I mean, it's flawless. It still looks fantastic. Looks way better than a lot of movies today. Absolutely love that. Next, we have The Meg on 4K Steelbook. I actually think this is my most recent pickup, and I was much more inclined and passionate to go out and buy this one after seeing how awful the sequel is that just came out. I mean, I hated that movie from front to back. Almost zero redeemable qualities. It's definitely going to be on my worst of the year list this year. But this movie, I think, kind of just knew what it was. Entertaining, fun, had some spooks and thrills in there. None that are going to scare a horror movie veteran, but like it's just a nice, spooky popcorn, big budget, entertaining blockbuster, you know? I actually started reading the Meg book that this movie's based off of. Obviously, it's very different. They really Jason Stathamed the hell out of this movie, but both are good. And I know there's actually like 6 or 7 books, which is crazy. So if they keep making these movies, obviously I'm going to be seated, but if it's anything like Meg 2, I'm not going to be happy about it. Give me more Meg 1. Loved that shit. Next, we have Mission Impossible Fallout 4K Steelbook. I mean, such a good action movie, right? Like one of the best action movies ever made. It was at that point where every Mission Impossible movie, the more and more they made, just kept getting better and better. I think Dead Reckoning was a little bit of a slight step down for me personally, but this one's chugging on all cylinders. I mean, a lot of it's also Henry Cavill. I mean, every scene he's involved in, action movie bliss, the halo jump, that insane fight sequence in the bathroom, the helicopter chase. I mean, Tom Cruise upped his game in this one. That is an absolute banger of a Mission Impossible film. Oh, I was wrong. I do own No Country for Old Men. All right. I think this is my favorite Coen Brothers movie ever made. It's also in, I think, my top 10 movies ever made, just in general. I mean, it's kind of hard to describe. It's like a hardcore cat and mouse Western thriller. Has one of the best movie villains ever made in this movie. Javier Bardem, you are a madman. So, absolutely love that film. One of the best ever made. Next, you have Michael Bay's Pain and Gain. This one has been a guilty pleasure for so long. I absolutely love it. I unironically think it might be the best movie Michael Bay's ever made. It's so entertaining and over the top and funny. It knows exactly what it's trying to be. And when Michael Bay is kind of able to tune into that, I think his movies are pretty great. You know, like Ambulance, they just let him run and do his crazy ass thing. And that movie was super entertaining. So for people that kind of have that bad stigma of like Michael Bay sucks, if they come into this household and they haven't seen Pain and Gain, you better believe that disc is flying into the player. Next, we have Spider-Man No Way Home in 4K. Without question, one of the best movies the MCU has ever put out. I mean, the hype for this film was through the roof, and it's somehow still delivered. All three Spider-Men in the same movie. How could you go wrong? And I'm just going to say right now, I'm a Tobey guy. I definitely think he's the best Spider-Man and Peter Parker we've ever gotten. Fight me in the comments if you need to. And this movie was definitely one of the best cinematic experiences I've ever had in the theater, and it's also a blast at home, so I had to own it. Next, we have Superbad. One of the best comedies of my formative years. It really helped shape my sense of humor. Definitely saw this one way before I should have. I think I was like 11 or 12 watching this one in my buddy's attic. We were absolutely laughing our asses off. Super rewatchable. Still quote it today. This was a necessary addition to the collection. The Thing on 4K. This is my favorite horror movie ever. John Carpenter, you are one sick puppy. An absolute genius for this one. It's in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. This one is just killer. The practical effects reign supreme in this movie. Kurt Russell gives a very memorable and awesome performance. If you somehow have not seen this movie, and I'm hoping there's not a single person that watches this video that hasn't seen it, stop what you're doing right now, watch this thing. Killer horror, iconic, best horror movie ever made. Next, we have Thor Ragnarok, one of the funniest MCU movies they've ever put out. I really think Taika Waititi did wonders with this character. He took Thor, a main hero in the Avengers, who I didn't give a shit about, completely did a 180. Like, I actually cared about him. He became one of my favorites. That is not an easy task. They clearly knew what path they were going down with this character after those first 2 forgettable and rocky films. So they brought Taika Waititi in there to add some style, add some flair, and he completely supercharged the character for me. One of the funniest, most memorable, and rewatchable MCU movies. Top Gun Maverick, the 4K Steelbook. Tom Cruise, you are one badass gentleman for this movie. I mean, the stunts are incredible. It's all high octane, high thrills, high entertainment. Way better than the original Top Gun. Like, I like the first Top Gun movie. It's definitely a classic for a reason. This one blows it out of the water. Might be the best legacy sequel we've ever seen. Had to own this one. Was my favorite movie of last year. Just barely beating out the Batman. This one rocks. I think I saw it in the theater like 5 or 6 times. The Transporter and The Transporter 2. I'm a massive Jason Statham fan, especially before he reached the level of stardom he's at now. These much more simple, low-budget action movies where he was doing all of the stunts. Like, some of the stuff he does in these movies are insane, especially the first movie was a lot more simple, had those raw stunts to them. But I go back and watch some of those action sequences, especially that one where he breaks up that poker game in that mansion. You watch, they throw axes at him, you go into the hallway, that he's stuck in between all of them. You pause that scene at any point. That's really Statham doing that shit. These are just endlessly rewatchable. My dad showed me them when I was kind of in my teenage years. Love those movies. Watch them all the time. True Romance, the Arrow Video Special Edition 4K. Again, this is a movie that's in my top 5 ever. So I had to ball out for this kind of edition. I don't even know how much it was. It was probably like $100 or more, but worth every penny. Comes with a really cool art book too, but this movie might be my favorite thing Tarantino has ever done, and he didn't even direct it. Little fun fact that I'm sure everybody knows at this point, but I'm gonna say it anyway because I tell it every time that I talk about True Romance, but the late, great Tony Scott directed this movie, actually Ridley Scott's brother. But Quentin Tarantino went to him with 2 screenplays, one for True Romance and one for Reservoir Dogs. And he said, you can make one of these, but I'm directing the other one. And Tony Scott said, all right, give me True Romance, right? He started reading the script, made this movie, had a blast doing it. He went to Tarantino and begged him to let him do Reservoir Dogs. Obviously, Tarantino said, no way. He made that movie himself, and the rest is history. But True Romance, absolute thrill ride from start to back. Great performances, tons of comedy, tons of gore. All of those Tarantino trademarks are in here. They're oozing through this script that you'll honestly think sometimes that he did direct this. That's just how powerful Tarantino's writing abilities are. Next, we have the 4K Steelbook of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, another one of my favorites from last year. I am an absolute Nick Cage super fan, so this movie was pretty much made for me. I'm definitely the target audience and the demographic. There's so many nods and references to his past performances that I'm just eating it all up. It's super funny. He has a great rapport with Pedro Pascal. I mean, what's not to love? A guy like me is going to be all over this movie. I mean, come on, a movie where Nick Cage plays Nick Cage to help uncover the secrets of a drug cartel? Sign me the hell up. Next, we have Unforgiven on 4K, another one that my dad introduced me to years ago. This is the best Western movie I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of them. It's also in my top 5 favorite movies ever. Like, this movie absolutely slaps. Clint Eastwood does his best work directing this movie. He also puts out a great performance alongside Morgan Freeman and Gene Hackman. There's just legendary Western stuff going on in here. Tons of action, tons of drama. I love everything about this movie. If you haven't seen this one and you like Westerns, you have to throw this on your list. I mean, a lot of the tropes and stuff that we see from Westerns today, you can kind of thank that movie for a lot of it. There's some great stuff in there. Last but not least, Upgrade. This is one of the most underappreciated and underrated action sci-fi movies of recent years, maybe of all time. I mean, Logan Marshall Green acts the shit out of this movie. There's some great action, great ambiance. And the way I always describe this movie is that it's a better Venom movie than Venom. I know, not an insanely high bar to surpass, let's be honest there. But this movie's about a guy that gets this implant that kind of takes over his whole body, and he starts losing control more and more. He doesn't really know what he's up to. There's some insane John Wick sci-fi type of action fighting scenes in this. It's just relentless. I love it. Anytime someone hasn't seen it, I'm throwing it on. Upgrade, baby. So there you have it, guys. Every single Blu-ray in my personal physical media collection. Thank you if you somehow made it to the end of this video. I know this is a lot longer than the content you've come to expect on this channel. Usually I'm doing my like sub 10-minute movie reviews, but thank you so much if you made it to the end. And let me know in the comments below, what's your favorite Blu-ray or 4K you have in your own personal collection? If you give me a good enough sales pitch, I'm sure I'll get jealous enough to add it to my own. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys at the next one.